You're live now, Chair.
Thank you. Right, good afternoon. Welcome to Schools Forum. I'm Dave Jones and I'm chairing the meeting today. Members of the public are invited to view this meeting online and the meeting is being recorded. Forum members are requested to keep your cameras on during the meeting, but only turn on your microphone when you wish to speak. And if you have any questions or comments to make on the reports, please use the chat function and type in RTS, request to speak. Officers, please keep your cameras off until you're called to speak. And now I'm just going to go through and ask everyone to confirm that they are present today. So, Jackie Collins.
I'm here.
Simon Graham.
I can confirm that.
Thank you. Jack Jones.
Here.
Ruth Warswick. No Ruth. Sean Preston.
Yep, afternoon.
Afternoon. Joe Cooper. No Joe. Nis Hardingham.
Yeah, here.
Nathan Waits.
Yeah, afternoon, I'm here.
Afternoon. Sharon Burt.
I'm present.
Councillor Tom Coles. No. Councillor Leo Madden. No. Councillor Ryan Brent. No. Councillor Chris Dyke.
Good evening.
Evening. Chris Cademy.
Yep, here.
Brilliant. Carl Jewell. No. And then Sarah Daly.
Oh, yeah, I'm here.
Hello. Mike Snowman.
Yep, present.
Angela.
Angela is on her way in. She's having some IT problems at the moment.
Okay. And Alison, you're obviously here.
Yes, I'm here.
Susie Horton. Susie, I can see your name, so I know you're here. There you are, you and me. Okay, hi Susie, I can see you're there. Is there anyone here who we haven't name checked?
Hi, Sally Hodgson.
All right, hello Sally. Anyone else? No? Okay. That's it then. So we are ready to get underway. So first of all, apologies for absence. Alison.
There's been no apologies for absence.
Okay. Alice, again, any changes to declarations of interest or?
So declarations of interest. I'm missing 3 declarations of interest at the moment. Councillor Coles, Councillor Madden and Councillor Dyke. I will send out the forms to individuals after this meeting so that they have a chance to respond.
That's great, thank you. And Alison, again, membership. Any updates on membership?
Okay, so there are no further membership changes expected during the course of this financial year, this calendar year. We do still have some vacancies. We have 5 vacancies, 1 primary governor representative, 1 secondary governor representative and 3 secondary academy representatives. And if I could call on academy colleagues when they're in meetings to request people to say what a fun forum this is, and if they could join, that would be really helpful, and contact me if they do need, if they're interested.
Yeah, okay, thank you Alison. Let's hope we get some joiners. Okay, moving on to agenda item 4, minutes of the previous meeting. So we need to ensure it's a correct record of the meeting held on the 13th of July. Are members happy that this is a correct record? Okay, yeah. That's approved unless anybody's got anything to say, which I don't think anyone has. Okay, the minutes of the previous meeting have therefore been approved. I don't believe there were any matters arising from the last minutes. Am I right, Alison?
There's no matters arising.
Okay, fabulous. Has Angela managed to get in yet? Don't think she... Oh no, I can see Angela there. Are you in, Angela? Can we...
Yes. So apologies.
Marvellous. That's okay. We're just getting on to item 6, school funding arrangements for 24-25. Are you okay to present that?
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear.
Excellent, okay. So this report updates Schools Forum on the latest developments and our process towards the school funding arrangements for 24-25. The DfE issued the indicative funding for 24-25 in October for the different blocks of DSG funding, and Table 1 sets out the movement. Section 5 sets out the changes to the mainstream school funding formula, including the growth funding and proposals for managing affordability. And the schools have been consulted, and the responses that we've received have been in favour of the proposals, and the report details that information. The report also details the de-delegation request of funding for the education functions for primary and secondary maintained schools. Section 9 details the timetable for the expansion of the early years funded provision to include working parents of children from 9 months to 3 years over the next 2 financial years, along with the proposals from the DfE to local authority funding formula for children for 2 years old and below, in line with the 3 and 4 year old formula. And we're expecting further information, which I think we might have received actually now, and so we're going through all of that detail, along with there's been capital announcements as well about the support of that rollout. And finally, the DfE have confirmed that the grant for the Teachers' Pay Award from September 23, and that will be continued to be paid as a separate grant in 24-25, but it will be incorporated into the formula funding for 25-26. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Angela. Does anybody have any questions or comments about any of this? Sean.
Thank you for that, and Angela, thank you for the paper. I think it's all very clear. I just wanted to get a point of clarity. So according to what I'm reading, it suggests you're not expecting the full national funding formula, including the area cost adjustment, to be affordable. Are we expecting to not have enough money in the pot when the final figures do come through, or are we potentially expecting it to not be affordable?
We always put into because of the timing, we can't completely know, what our allocation is, and then what we've got to pay out. So we're running through all the figures, and we don't have time to come back to Schools Forum to get approval once we do all those calculations. So it might be that the funding that we do get, covers everything, but we won't know until we've done all of those things. So it's just because we're on the national funding formula, there's very few things that we can actually adjust. So the report just details those things that we would look at adjusting to distribute all of the funding to yourselves.
Thank you, that's really helpful. And just one more quick question, if that's okay, or a point really. I know regarding the falling roles funding, you don't expect Portsmouth to be in receipt of that funding, and therefore you're proposing to not set up a falling roles fund. I just wanted to echo my support for that. I think that's a very sensible approach to take, so I just wanted to make that point as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Simon?
Yeah, just for the minutes, back in October, St Edmunds raised issues in relation to the secondary school delegation aspect that's on here, and the fact that it had objected to it at the outset at that point. So obviously that's not in the minutes anywhere, but we had contacted Angela much earlier, so I have that email and that evidence already. So I know we're going to vote on that, but we had already back in October said that from a secondary point of view we didn't agree with that delegation.
Okay, thank you, Simon.
I think in terms of the due process, in terms of the decision making, obviously the consultation is sent out to formally get comments back, and so that's one aspect of it. And obviously Schools Forum here now, and I'd need to check exactly whether, when we got that email. I thought it was after the consultation had ended, but I've got to admit I would need to check, because of course we had to reissue the consultation and change the the dates, because they changed what we were expecting in terms of our funding, and they changed the values that were being used for 24-25. So I can't completely remember the dates that you did get in touch, but yes, we are aware.
I've got the email in front of me. I can clarify that for the minute.
Okay, so we'll get that recorded. Thank you, Simon. And obviously then we'll come on to the voting in a little while. Any other comments, questions? No? Okay. What we're going to do then is split this up into different sections. So under item 6, we're going to go 2.1 first of all, which is the recommendation. This is for everybody, all of Schools Forum. The recommendation of the Schools Forum notes the DfE's proposed changes to school revenue arrangements for 24-25, and endorse the proposals to implement the local funding formula. Arrangements to set out this report. Approve the proposal not to set up a falling roles fund for 24-25. Which reminds me, one comment I did want to make, sorry, before we move on to that. So conscious of everyone else's comments. Angela, what about the growth fund? The growth fund difference between primary and secondary is quite significant. The secondary element is more than double the primary element, which to me seems a little not balanced. I appreciate there may be additional costs for secondary and so forth, but having been in receipt of that this year, the growth fund hasn't covered anything like the costs for the additional class I've had. The growth fund barely covers one teacher, so is that something, I know it's on for the next agenda, is that something that we could look into, the discrepancy and how it works, and whether there is more finance? Because obviously as well, there have been significant support staff and teacher pay rises since this was first done, so it would seem appropriate to investigate if that money could be raised. I don't know if anyone else has got any comments on that, or Angela? Couple there. Who's up there first? Sean?
Thank you. Forgive me and just remind me here, this policy's been in place and has been consistent for a few years now, I believe, has it not? It's not changed in the last couple of years, I don't recall. Is that correct, or have I missed something there? Just for a point of clarity first and foremost, if that's all right.
I don't. It is right. I don't know whether Alison's got more details from memory. I'd be guessing a bit. I think we have refreshed the secondary one slightly more recently than the primary one, but I don't know whether Alison can remember the actual details.
Yes, so Angela is right. We have refreshed the secondary growth fund in recent years, probably about 4 years ago, but it could be 4 or 5 years ago. Thank you, Nis, it's 5 years ago.
But the principle is that the policy itself and the procedure hasn't changed for that, so we're not changing that, okay.
The criteria hasn't changed, it was just
and the rates that are noted in point 5.11, which is 60,900 for primary and 144,000 for secondary, is that based on the 7 months worth of funding, or is that based on 12 months worth of funding?
That's based on 12 months worth of funding.
Okay. Thank you.
Nis.
Yeah, I was involved in this quite a bit about 5 years ago when we last did the review. And as you said, Dave, there were some clear arguments for why the funding needed to be different, but I do completely take your point. And I think particularly given how much we're asking schools to be more inclusive, that actually the primary level should be reviewed in terms of how it's calculated, because my recollection is that it was just calculated on the basis of one additional teacher, and actually one additional teacher isn't enough to look after all of those children. So I was just wanted to endorse what you said. I think there is a slight change to the criteria this year, if I'm reading it all correctly, in that we've had situations where schools have been under PAN but have taken additional groups in secondary, whole classes in, and then haven't been able to receive growth funding because of the fact that they were under PAN. And so there seems to be a change in the paperwork suggested this year to actually, as long as the Deputy Director has included those, then that element can change. So just to answer your point, Sean, there is a change in criteria this year as well, from what I've read.
And Dave, if I'm okay to come in, if that's all right, quickly just on that. I think it's a very valid question we're asking, but I think we do need to be careful in terms of the sort of precedents we set here. Because obviously growth is meant to support inherent growth, not existing within existing capacity. So we want to be just very careful around the rationale while we're making growth payments. I totally endorse looking at it again. But there could be a situation where schools just organically increasing and decreasing roles could be financially benefiting on the way down as well as the way up. So we want to be careful around what that could look like in the worst possible case scenario. So yeah, just to endorse that as well.
Okay, thank you. So, Alison, Angela, will that be something you'll be able to take on board in when you're looking at revising these figures and rationales?
So I think Alison was just going to add something extra just to clarify the point about the sort of the criteria. In terms of the actual document at the moment, the sort of the criteria that is in there is what we propose, and we're happy to look at it, for next year and look at that criteria. And if actually we do get some more funding, then we can cover the area cost adjustment and the minimum funding guarantee. If there is funding there to put back into the growth fund, one of our proposals for distributing the money would be to increase the amount per class for growth funding. So we could definitely, if everybody feels as though it's more in the primary value, then we can look at that. If we have to share it between the two different phases, then obviously if there is any money, then it'll go a bit less far for everybody. But that is something that we were going to look at in terms of the values, but in terms of the sort of the criteria, it's, we can look at that next year, and rethink, how that value is properly built up.
Okay, thank you, Angela. Alison?
So I just really wanted to clarify the fact that the criteria have changed, where schools are taking on a growth class and they're still under PAN. That change has been dictated by the DFE, so the DFE has said that we must build that in. However, what we have been clear about is obviously it's not just about fortuitous growth, it's more about actually taking on a class due to sufficiency needs, and that then would have to be agreed by the deputy director. So it just stops kind of generalised growth. But if somebody's been asked to take on a bulge class, they're still under their PAN, and that does mean that we can now pay growth for them.
Thank you, Alison. Simon?
Yeah, I would just support the point you made, Dave, and that I agree from a second point of view. There's too much of a disparity between the two, and just from a staffing point of view, I don't think that is manageable for growth funding from a primary perspective. And as you said, it doesn't cover the cost of additional staff that you require in primary schools. So I would also echo and urge that be reviewed, please.
That's great. Thank you, Simon. Okay, right. As I interrupted my own thoughts, we will now look at approving all the sections of 2.1. So do I have a proposal for approval of all the elements in 2.1? Thank you, Sean. And a seconder, please. And Nis, thank you very much. Okay, so this is for everybody here. So the recommendation has been proposed and seconded. Or now take the vote by affirmation of the meeting as permitted within the regulations. There is no dissent. The proposal is passed. Are there any objectors to this recommendation? No, therefore the recommendation is passed. Okay, we're going to go on to 2.2 now. So this is the recommendation to maintain primary schools, approve the delegation of funding to support the education functions as set out in section 7. So this only applies to myself and Jackie. So, Jackie, do I have a proposer? Jackie, I can't see you. Are you there?
She's waving, Dave. She's got her hand up.
Okay, I can't see it on my screen for some reason, right? And I will second it. So, formally then, the recommendation has been proposed and seconded. We'll now take the vote by affirmation of the meeting as permitted within the regulations. If there is no dissent, the proposal is passed. Are there any objectors to this recommendation? No. Okay, therefore that recommendation has been approved. Now 2.3, the recommendation that maintains secondary schools approve the delegation of funding to support the education functions as set out in paragraph section 7 only applies to Simon, as far as I'm aware. And just given your comments earlier, this is a tricky one. I'm guessing, do you want to propose it or not, Simon?
No, we object to it, as we have already indicated prior to it coming to the meeting, to that proposal.
Okay, thank you. So just to confirm then with Alison, that means we don't take that forward to a vote, because obviously Simon's the only person who can vote on this.
That's right. We don't take this forward to a vote.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Right then, so now we move on to item 7, the DSG Q2 budget monitoring section, and that is for Alison.
Thank you. Okay, so this report details the forecast position of the dedicated schools grant as at the end of September 23, which is an overspend of £32,000. The details for the reasons for the overspend are detailed in the report, but there are a couple of things to be noted. As at the end of September, the class lists and the information regarding the autumn term places had not been received, and therefore the associated high needs budgets have all been forecast on budget. There is a potential that the forecast will change over the course of the autumn term, and to be honest, we are already starting to see that. The early years block allocation was increased in July 23 to take into account the 23 census in January, and in line with the approved delegations, the budget has already been adjusted accordingly, and Table 1 includes those increases. Any questions with regards to the budget monitoring before I move on to the revised budget? No? Okay, I'll move on to the revised budget. So Section 8 sets out the proposed budget revisions, which are included in the table in Appendix 1. The net impact of the budget adjustments is an overspend of just under £18,000, and it is proposed that the shortfall is met from the dedicated schools grant balances. The report also requests that Schools Forum note that the forecast position is at the end of the second quarter and endorses the budget revisions for 23-24, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Alison. Any questions, comments? No? Okay. Very clear report again. Sean, is that new?
Yeah, sorry about that. Probably just more a comment on potential agenda item for us to consider in the future, definitely not for today. I note in the section just above, section 0.8, around the uncommitted carry forward expected just under 5 million. I wonder whether as a forum it's worth us considering what we may look at utilising that for over coming years. We know there's a lot of pressures on the horizon from many different areas, and I just wonder whether an agenda item in the future might be worth around utilising some of that, or what the risks associated with using some of that may be.
I was going to ask, following that question, actually, it might be worth Mike Stoneman coming in to respond to this, because I know there has been some work happening within the authority with schools regarding the DSG balances.
Yeah, do you want me to take that question now, David? Before
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, so you may recall at a previous Schools Forum meeting, we discussed this subject, and we said that we would look at setting up a task and finish group to look at how we could potentially use some of the DS carry forward to support the inclusion agenda in schools, recognising the pressures that schools are under. So we put out an invitation, invited heads to that meeting, and we've now had 4 meetings of that group. In fact, we met this afternoon, and there are a number of proposals now which we are considering, which we're looking at to take forward to support schools in that endeavour. So at a Schools Forum meeting next year, probably January or February, we're putting the proposals together at the moment. We will make some recommendations to you for this very purpose, Sean. So yeah, we've been looking at that with a lot of work, and thank you to the heads that have taken part in that work.
Thank you, Mike, and apologies for jumping the gun then.
That's all right.
Yeah, thank you for that, Mike. I'll be really interested to see when it comes out. Okay, Nathan.
Hi. So it's a sort of 2-part question, but just relating to the increase in the budget in the early years complex needs. And I think, I and probably other colleagues are aware of increasing needs coming into reception places across schools as well. So the first part is just the fact that the local authority is obviously aware in the early years area. Is there anything that can be done in advance of reception allocation next year in terms of identifying individual EHCP needs or quite specific needs when those children are allocated to those reception places moving forward. And then secondly, I suppose, is a little bit more socio-political, and the after effects of COVID and lockdown babies, and potentially some of the impact that may have had on their development and preparedness for joining school as well. What could perhaps be done, across the authority in, supporting that development and some of those challenges to help prepare those children better for school as well.
Thank you, Nathan. And as far as the EHCPs, there was some work this year, and Mike may ought to expand on this, where they were accelerating how EHCPs in reception were to be funded, weren't they, Mike? So that rather than it being delayed for the due process.
On the EHC request which we had come through in early years, and so those children were coming into a year reception, but without an EHCP because the assessment process was still trundling through. And of course, you'd be aware we've had some delays, significant delays of that because of capacity, and we agreed that where those children had been identified, that we would pay the, if it had been an EHCP at I think the exceptional rate, that funding would be in place, and then once the assessment was completed, we would then put them on whatever rate it was, and we wouldn't recoup that money. So that was put in place for year reception this year because of those delays, and I hope that was helpful. We're also looking at and going back to the working group that I've just mentioned about how we can support primary schools, particularly in year reception, where they've got children that are coming in, some children that we've not really had eyes on, and how we can support primary schools with those children, potentially with some additional funding, but that's what we're working through, rather than jumping to an EHC assessment, for example, because it's clear the need is there. We don't want to delay addressing that need, and as you know, the EHC assessment process is a bureaucratic process and doesn't necessarily lead to a good outcome. So that's something which we are actively considering at the moment as part of those working group arrangements.
Thank you, Mike. Does that answer your question, Nathan?
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions or comments? No? Okay. In that case, it's recommended that Schools Forum notes the forecast year-end budget position for the DSG, together with the associated explanation contained in the report, and endorses the revisions to the 23-24 budget as set out in the appendices 1 and 8. Do I have a proposer for these recommendations? Thank you, Sean, and a seconder. Jack, thank you very much. Okay, the recommendation has been proposed and seconded. I'll now take the vote by affirmation of the meeting as permitted within the regulations. There is no dissent. The proposal is passed. Are there any objectors to this recommendation? No, thank you. Then the recommendation is passed. The next meeting is on Thursday, January the 11th, but that is the end of the meeting today. So thanks everybody for attending. If we just pause for a moment for Jane to end the live stream recording,
I'll do that now.
We'll let you know when we're off air. Thank you.